Hi, everybody. So we're going to be building an audience, and this is going to be something that we're trying now. We're going to share some information from Spokane Regional Clean Air Agency, and we're going to be taking your questions, if you'd like. Just put them in the comments below. We have Katie over there watching, and she's going to tell us what the questions are, and then we'll answer them. Who? Russ Newmiller, ladies and gentlemen, one of the inspectors with, again, Spokane Regional Clean Air Agency. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to KXLY4's Facebook Live.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I got to tell you, I don't know if people understand exactly what you guys do. So why don't we start off with that and give us that big umbrella. This is who we are.
Okay. All right. Well, from the inspector's perspective, I'm one of 5 inspectors at Spokane Clean Air. And we do a lot of various things. We respond to complaints throughout the Spokane County is our jurisdiction. And we respond to complaints from anything from dusty construction sites, outdoor burning, illegal outdoor burning, smoky chimneys, that type of thing. One of our primary duties also is to inspect facilities to make sure that they're properly operating and maintaining their air pollution control equipment. And another big component of what we do is regulating asbestos within Spokane County. We take a look at a lot of more of the commercial end stuff, the bigger renovation, demolition projects you see around the county.
There's a lot of that going on.
Yep. And so we get notifications on that. We try to inspect those as best we can, make sure the asbestos is being properly handled and disposed of. And so what we also want to do, though, is provide that same information to homeowners who might be thinking of tackling their own remodel project.
So when so many of the old buildings, I mean, you know, they get torn down and all of that gets mitigated out before it gets torn down so it doesn't become a dust situation, right? But also when they remodel, you know, we want to save that history, but that history comes with its own share of issues, which asbestos, of course, used huge 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s a little bit. Getting into that is a way to hold heat in. You know, it's a good insulator.
Yeah, they used to call it a miracle material because it's resistance to heat and fire and resistance to chemicals. It was a really good component to put within building materials because it made those building materials really strong. At the time, though, they didn't realize that it could later become a hazard when that stuff starts to deteriorate or when people start to tear it out and that type of thing.
When it becomes airborne, that's when we see the issues with asbestosis and those types of things.
Yeah, we don't want to freak anybody out. You know, I mean, there's asbestos in a lot of building materials, but if they're intact and not being disturbed, they're not a hazard. It's only when those fibers within the material are impacted and released into the air is when it can become a hazard.
Okay. We have a question? Do we have a question? No, I thought we did. Okay. So when we look at what's going on with some of the remodels, and we'll get to some of that remodeling questions. We have a question now. Popcorn ceilings. All right. One of our viewers is asking, is there asbestos in popcorn ceilings?
There's a high likelihood that there'll be asbestos within a popcorn ceiling texture. It's not 100% guarantee. The only way to really know is to have it tested. And there's a specific method and protocol to properly test a building material to know what the asbestos concentration is. And we actually have on our website, SpokaneCleanAir.org, some good information on there. One thing we have is asbestos service providers list, which lists local area contractors who can come in and do that testing for you to determine, you know, if you have asbestos to worry about or not.
Right. We've always suggested whenever you're removing, you know, anything from the home, be it popcorn ceiling or anything else, that, again, water is your friend. When it comes to some of this stuff, to make sure that it remains wet, so that it remains more of a mud than it gets into a powder.
Right.
And that's the safe side, no matter, even if it's late 70s, 80s home, you're still going to be safer there, plus it comes off easier.
Yeah.
You know, when it's wet down.
Actually, a popular misconception we run into a lot is that people think asbestos was banned at some time, at a particular time, like, say, with lead-based paint. Most people know 1978's the cutoff, but with asbestos, there's not that date. There was a a ban implemented in '89, I think, but it was overturned through appeal process, and,
Right.
and not a lot of that ban remained. There is some components of the ban that remains, but
it's still out there.
Yeah, it's more what is banned and is no longer used are more so the materials you'd find in commercial buildings, like spray applied fireproofing, or the insulation on steam pipes and that type of things. And those aren't the things that you find in your home. You
Right,
know, those,
and that was one of the huge issues back with the Navy yards and stuff like that. I mean, they were spraying the stuff all over the place, and it just became a huge issue.
That's for sure.
All right, so when we look at our homes, and here I'm going to show you this, and again, asbestos is one of those topics where you have to talk about so many different things because it is out there. We've talked about it. Yeah, do we have a question?
I have an old octopus furnace and would like it removed. It has some asbestos wrapped around part of the ducting. Can I DIY it, and if so, where do I dispose of it?
That is a great question. All right, let's talk about that because that's one of the things that we're, in some of, you look at these old homes and they've got the old ductwork, or they have the hot air or the hot water heat. That those wrappings largely have or contain asbestos. You can sort of assume that it is asbestos.
Yeah, you can.
A homeowner can do it themselves, but they have to be very careful.
That's true, and we do define very closely what a homeowner is, because we don't want people to confuse that with, say, a residential property. There's a difference. We differentiate our regulations with regard to commercial type things and homeowner type projects. In order to do it yourself, you have to be the structure has to be an owner occupied single family residence.
Okay.
So it can't be a house, a rental, a house that somebody bought to flip, because if that material is removed improperly in those situations, you're not only exposing yourself, but the potential new buyers or your tenants and that type of thing, and that's not what we want to see. So with the boiler situation, if they are truly the owner and it's a single family residence and that's where they currently live, they can do that work themselves. The local area landfill that accepts asbestos waste is Graham Road out by Fairchild Air Force Base. There are requirements on disposal, and they have pretty strict requirements out there about how they receive asbestos.
How many mils the bags are and things like that. I think it's a 5 mil minimum bag, and I mean you've got to do some research.
Yeah, it's got to be labeled and tracked, and they can help you out there. They can even, last I heard, provide the bags for you.
Okay. One of the other things is, again, I'll bring this up, if you are going to do it, and the suggestion is, unless you're really handy, that you probably shouldn't, and whoever may be putting in your new HVAC could assist you with that properly. They've got to go through the regulations, but they would know what to do.
They would most likely have to hire a state-certified asbestos abatement contractor, and not just any contractor can do asbestos work. They have to be properly trained, certified. The workers have to be properly trained and certified with the proper personal protective equipment. And
it's sort of a thing.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
It's definitely a thing.
If you're truly going to try and do it, though, the best thing to do is usually you have metal bands that have attached there, is that you soak it with water. You cut the bands. You should be in a full garb, even though everything is wet. I mean, that's an expense, because you want a full body suit, you want to wear a respirator, you want to have gloves, you tape them off, you put those into the bags, you do that, keeping everything extremely wet throughout the entire room. Not a running water wet, but, and it's a thing, and you need to be very careful when you do it. So I would suggest you go to an expert. It's worth the extra cost to make sure it's done correctly. We have a question.
Okay.
Recently had some asbestos abated in my laundry room based on the fact Zero Res didn't want to clean my vents. I'm worried that even though I got it abated, how do I know that I am in the clear to get my vents cleaned? And could there be more asbestos in those vents? So I get that. It's an airborne deal. Can you track maybe what's in the vents and test that? Can you test that dust for asbestos?
There is a test method to test general dust for asbestos.
Is that something they can have you come out and
no, that's not something we do. Again, we'd probably refer them to our service providers list and those local area consultants who do that type of testing.
So they would take, again, a cover off one of your vents. They would remove the vents from the floor. They would go down into there. They would get a sample and test it, and you would get a certification. They would look at that, and you would have I forget what it's called, but the asbestos,
the lab report.
The lab report, and that's going to tell you if it's not in there, then call Zero Res by all means and say, okay, here, I've got the report. We're clean. We're good to go.
And a lot of times, if they had an abatement contractor do that work, there's some fairly strict requirements about how they have to do it and what they have to do after the fact. And most likely they have some air monitoring data from when they did the work and then also after the work was done. So you could contact the abatement contractor in that case. I think, did they say they had it abated?
They had it abated. So
you might be able to get back in touch with the abatement contractor, and they might be able to verify for you that the air was clean when they got done.
I'm going to go off things here a little bit when it comes to cleaning your vents. And here's one of the cool things, and Zero Res is an extreme team, partner, and we love them. Whoever you have do it, is that when you have those cleaned, that does take a lot of old stuff out of those vents, out of your air, and we're talking about clean air. Yep. I'm just going to say that you're going to see an improvement in your respiratory. If you have issues with that, you're going to see issues if you're allergic to dust. That's going to improve your world. And then as those get cleaned, and you should do it every 10 years, there are many homes that have never had it done. So when you do that, it is going to improve the air in your home, and then you put that filter in there. That sort of just traps the big stuff. There are some new micron, deals that you need to change more often than you do, by the way. But it's something worth doing because you'll feel better. Yeah, it really is. They do good work. Okay, another question: how do we get the asbestos siding removed from our house? What would it cost? Is there assistance for low-income seniors? Again, great questions because this is. We're referring back to your website, I think. Yeah.
Again, that service providers list is a pretty good go-to guidance document that we would refer people to when they have, a question like that.
There's that old siding that's got that rippled edge that we see a lot around town.
We often tell people that you can't tell a building material is asbestos just by looking at it. But when it comes to that siding, you almost can because it's been tested a million times and it comes back asbestos a million times. And
go to SpokaneCleanAir.org, and they've got a list of people who are certified to do asbestos testing and abatement. Yeah. And you can contact them and talk to them.
We actually do also have a more specific guidance document on how to select an abatement contractor.
Okay.
Because you probably want to call around, get some bids, and get a feel for the professionalism of the contractor, who you feel comfortable working with and that type of thing. And that guidance document gives you some information on how to maybe check the history of compliance with some of these contractors and that type of thing. So that's a good resource also on our website.
The other thing you need to remember is that when you're doing any work on your home and you have anyone, be it asbestos abatement or you're just bringing someone in to do insulation or repair your front deck, you can ask for references. Make sure that these are people coming into your home. And so really when it comes to that, make sure you're getting references. And again, your document there is going to allow them on how to choose that correctly. Yep. And bonded and insured, man, it's a great thing just in case something goes awry. All right, when it comes to apartment community living, is there a strong enough, wait a minute, which way are we going here? When it comes to apartment commercial living, here we go. Is there a strong enough focus on investment regulation protection from apartment administration? How would one check in on this? So if it's an older apartment building, then that's probably more valid than the newer ones,
Yeah, definitely. With regard to asbestos and building materials, it is far more likely to be in the older buildings than the newer ones. So.
Let's talk about this. And Russ, you and I have had this conversation in as much as if you're living in a home and there's nothing wrong with it, or you're living in an apartment and there's nothing wrong with it, even if there's asbestos there, it's relatively safe. It's not being put into dust. It's not being cut by a saw. It's that type of thing that if the place is in good shape, then you living in it is not going to be, an issue.
Correct. Yeah. Even EPA has some guidance on that type of thing. A lot of people call and ask I'm buying a house and it has, whatever's asbestos. Should I have that removed? I'm freaked out, And we say no, that actually EPA says that removing it is sort of, in a way, a last resort. Leaving it alone if it's in good condition is the way to go. Say you have a popcorn ceiling texture. If it's got a coat of paint on it, it's pretty well isolated. We'd consider that to be encapsulated or enclosed. And so encapsulating it, enclosing it, like putting a new flooring over an old flooring if it's intact and it's a good substrate, for doing that.
Yeah,
for
it's level and
adhering
you don't need to remove it, just go over the top of it.
That is better than essentially less risk than having it removed.
Right, because a lot of those, some of the old kitchen tiles that are out there, those 12-inch kitchen tiles that are from the 50s and stuff. You start breaking those up and going crazy, then, again, this is where if you have to do that you want to make sure that you're wetting down the surfaces and make sure that just keeps it from becoming an airborne dust.
Right.
And that's what you really want to do, is you don't want to have a dusty environment.
Yeah,
But
and with regard to the floor tiles, it's actually the older 9-inch by 9-inch tiles.
The 9-inch?
Yeah,
Okay.
that are more likely to contain asbestos, much like the cement siding that we see around town. If you see a 9-inch by 9-inch tile, I'd say it's 90.
Odds
are pretty good that it's
Okay.
asbestos. It could be in the 12-inch ones too, but we found that those 9-inch ones are really the ones that have the highest likelihood to contain
So
asbestos.
cover them, encapsulate them, and then continue on with your world. All right, let's ask. We've got another question here. What is the cost to expect for just an inspection, and what would I need to anticipate for cost for removal by the square foot amount, if you could? Do you have any idea? Are there some approximates?
We figure a base minimum for an asbestos survey, and that's that. I don't know if we talked about that yet. An asbestos survey is what you have done to determine what's asbestos or what's not. A certified building inspector, they'll come in, they'll test, they'll actually take pieces of the materials, send them to a lab and get an asbestos concentration on those. And so that's... So what was the question again?
Hold on a minute, hold on.
I went off on a tangent there.
So what would an inspection cost approximately?
Right, yeah, got it. So what we figure is the bare minimum for that type of inspection is around $200, $250 just to sort of get somebody to show up. The additional costs are for the lab analysis, essentially. Right. And there's really no way to know what it'll cost until somebody comes out and takes a look at it. So that's one good reason to do some calling around off that service providers list. Let them know what you got, what you plan on doing, and get some bids on getting the survey done. And then also...
It's not cheap.
No, it's not. I mean,
you can find people who are less expensive than others.
Yeah.
And hopefully, again, off that list, they're certified. They have to do certain things in a certain way. So
yeah, and as far as the removal cost per square footage, it's going to depend on what the material is, where it's at. Too many variables there to really give a ballpark even.
We're not going to be able to answer the full breadth of that question.
Yeah.
Is sort of, I think, where we're going with that one. All right, what about selling a home built in the 50s? Is there asbestos in the kitchen flooring or glue material? And would I be required to remove it prior to selling? I think this goes back to what we talked about previously.
Yeah, you can leave it alone. There's no requirement to have it removed. Unless it's in a deteriorated state. One thing we say is you shouldn't leave a building material that's fallen apart or that type of thing for, in a residential situation or if you're selling a home.
So if that's a 50s home and the kitchen is in good shape and, it looks cool, chances are it is cool. Now, if that kitchen has, some... let's say it's one of those homes, and we've seen it before, we've got a little dry rot underneath there, some of the moisture around here. Certainly this year you're finding it. And so it's starting to break loose, and you've got, some loose areas of that floor. That would need to be probably replaced or shored up and then covered, and you'd have to put another floor in over the top of it if you could.
And it is fairly likely that, in a 50s home, that sheet vinyl flooring, if it is the original stuff, it might have a 50-50 chance of being asbestos, and most likely it's in the backing of the material. One thing we have available for homeowners is some guidance on actually how to remove materials safely. We have 3 documents available. One is for vinyl sheet flooring and how to protect yourself, how to keep that dust contained, and how to properly dispose of it, and that type of thing. And so we have one for vinyl sheet flooring, one for the cement asbestos board siding.
Gotcha.
And the other one I think is popcorn ceiling texture.
Okay.
So those are kind of the 3 ones, the major ones we run into a lot. And even if it isn't one of those 3 materials that you're thinking about tackling, you could still apply a lot of those procedures that are found within those documents to other materials too.
Hey, Jeremy, I'm going to show this again. So, again, asbestos, again, you said a lot of people go, well, it's illegal. I mean, no, it's not. This is just about everywhere in the home that it is, and it's potentially all over the place. In newer homes, it's lessened. They're not using it as much because, well, they don't want to deal with it.
There's a lot of liability. Everybody
so,
knows by now that asbestos is, a bad thing.
And so, the manufacturers are going away from it, and they're not using it as much. But some of the older homes, I mean, it was the miracle
mineral or material.
And so it was all over the place. So it's just one of those things, the older the home, again, if there's no issues in your home, okay, you're probably fine. If you're going to be remodeling, that's when you're going to see that potential issue come up. Yeah. That's where you need someone to come in to take a look and go, okay, this is what we need to look at, what needs to be abated, and what can be left alone.
And it is just a potential issue.
Right.
There's a lot of times you'll have somebody come in, do the testing for you, and there is no asbestos, and that's great news.
And they give you that little thing as well.
Yeah.
I think that it's one of those issues that you really need to learn more about. Certainly, if you're going to be flipping homes, if you're going to be remodeling and adding to your home, sometimes it's better just to put the add on, put the door in, and just minimal.
Minimize the impact.
Minimize the impact of what's going on. Vermiculite. This is what we find that in a lot of attics throughout Spokane.
Right. Yep.
What can you tell us about vermiculite?
It's an interesting material. Much of the vermiculite found in Spokane came from Libby, Montana, and that's a vermiculite mine that is known to have been contaminated with asbestos. And so, as we said before, asbestos is a naturally occurring mineral fiber, and it wasn't intentionally added to the vermiculite that was mined from Libby.
Gotcha.
There was veins of asbestos within the veins of vermiculite that they were mining, and it was just a contamination issue.
Okay.
So the good news about vermiculite is that if there's asbestos in it, and there most likely is, it's typically a low concentration. It's even like below less than 1%, which 1% is usually the cutoff as to whether it's regulated or not.
Gotcha. And naturally occurring, so it's got that less of that manufacturer's deal. It's less dangerous.
Well, I was gonna, I'd say no.
Okay.
Because although there's typically a low concentration of it within vermiculite,
Gotcha.
It's highly friable. It's very likely to become airborne.
All right.
Which we make a distinction there between friable materials and non-friable materials.
Okay.
Typically, the friable ones are more dangerous because, like I said,
they can go into a dust
airborne.
airborne.
I mean, you can basically just run your fingers through the vermiculite and you're going to kick up a little bit of dust.
Right.
You can almost kick up dust by looking at it. But
So leave that alone.
leave that alone if you can.
Okay.
And actually, in Spokane, we're somewhat unique in how we regulate asbestos or vermiculite.
Okay.
In that we say, and it's based on EPA's recommendation that if you find vermiculite, it should just be treated as asbestos.
Okay.
Because it is, like I said,
The odds are it's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we have another one. Can asbestos be found in other things in our daily lives? The answer is yes. It can. What do we need to be aware of? I mean, what's out there that might cause us concern or just general information?
It is, sort of everyday contaminate within the air, maybe not at a dangerous degree, but it can be found in older brake pads and brake components and that type of things with cars. And even, we found that it can be in, say, gravel pits where they're mining the rock and that type of thing.
Right.
There could be just trace amounts of that there. So it is sort of all around, but the biggest concern is, with the demolition and renovation of building materials, because it's concentrated
dust, and it's all right there.
You're right there, and you're breathing it, and it's almost non-perceptible within the normal environment. But it's not to say you couldn't find it there.
Okay. It is everywhere. There's no doubt about that. We've shown you in the houses, from asphalt shingles to the joint compounds that are used in some of those areas. And again, we're getting towards the end of our half hour, I guess. So as we look at this, what are some of the things that we'll recap? Go to Spokane. What is it? Spokane?
SpokaneCleanAir.org.
SpokaneCleanAir.org. You've got information there. You've got lists of people who are certified and that have met the requirements to inspect and abate.
Yep. And if you just have questions in general, I'm one of 5 inspectors down there.
Who are the other 5? Who are the other 4?
The other 4, well, we have Deirdre. She's been with us for quite a while. She's a good resource with asbestos.
Okay. Deirdre? Uh-huh. I know they're watching.
And Brandy.
Okay.
And Derek. You know Derek.
I know Derek Aubrey.
And
Derek,
how
are you doing?
And we got a new guy named Vaughn.
Vaughn. Yep. Okay. And so they go through the training. You guys are out there. I know you use high efficient vehicles because you are the clean air people. And you're out there also, again, when the dust is firing up and when there's all this stuff going on, in order to regulate that and make sure that they're using the proper amount of water on construction sites and stuff to keep that down so that we're more comfortable.
Yeah, we sort of transitioning, in the wintertime, it's wood smoke complaints that we get that we follow up on, try to make people aware of what the requirements are as far as minimizing the smoke from your chimney. And now we're kind of transitioning into the spring with the outdoor burning. People are trying to clean up their properties and burning things, and like to let them know that burning yard and garden debris is not allowed in most cases. And then and then in the summer, we'll transition to more the dusty construction sites, the road projects. We try to make sure that they're keeping water down, minimizing the dust from those types of things.
Water is a good thing when it comes to dust. That's why I should probably just rinse the whole inside of my house down just because of the dust. Or clean. I could clean. See, they're just one big thing of pledge. That's what they are at the Spokane Regional Clean Air Agency. Where there is burning allowed in some of the counties and stuff, is there a way, is it to make a smokeless fire? I mean, is it burning it hotter, making sure that there is good flames and stuff? Or we see people, the sledge piles and things like that.
Yeah, the burning that is allowed within Spokane County is generally silvicultural debris from unapproved parts of your property, where DNR would potentially write permits for that type of thing to remove forest slash and that type of thing for the purpose of reducing the fire danger. The only really other type of burning that's allowed within Spokane County or the city are the rec fires. Right. So we say with those should be just clean, dry firewood, not wet limbs that you pulled out of your yard or that type of thing.
Not construction waste.
No construction waste. That's a big no-no.
Okay.
We figure there's alternatives for people to dispose of that type of thing, and burning shouldn't be one of them because it can create a nuisance to your neighbors and that type of thing. So.
Yeah, most certainly. So we have plenty of wood out there, and again, the harder the wood, the hotter it burns, and we see that in fireplaces. It also is a better return on heat in the wintertime, and it does burn more cleanly.
Yep.
All right, we have another question. What if you're pregnant and have been exposed? The exposure part is the tricky part about this.
Yeah.
I don't know what,
there's no general safe level of asbestos exposure.
Right.
But there are what they call permissible exposure limits that have been determined for workers. So I imagine it's dependent upon your level of exposure, if it's a chronic exposure and an acute exposure. But I'd say refer to your physician on something like that.
If you're pregnant, or if you're anybody, and you're in a construction field in which there is a horrendous amount of dust and cutting and blowing up of walls with hammers and such, where the dust is going crazy, you don't want to be in that environment. you shouldn't be in that environment. I mean, it really comes down to safety precautions in anything, because your lungs don't need the dust nor the asbestos.
Right.
You know, so it's something where we can take control of that environment, make sure we wet things down as we go through a remodel. The Extreme team, we have to do all this. We have to have things checked, metered. We had one project, we need to see the inspection. Here's the inspection. This is where it's located. This is where it's not. Cool. We can work here. We can't work here.
Exactly.
And then they had that abated some months later. So we have to do that as well. And it's just something about being cautious in the environment you're in. Day to day, you're going to run into everything, but chances are it's okay because it's secure. It's sitting there. It's, you know.
If it's not disturbed and you're leaving it alone, there's no reason to be worried about it necessarily. You know?
All right. Anything else you want to add? We've gone 30 minutes. You thought you'd be good for 5.
Yeah. I did better than I thought.
I know. You did great. I'll have
we
coffee.
appreciate
you
you guys
this up.
having us out and, raising awareness on asbestos, and appreciate it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again. Of course, if you want to add some more questions, we'll keep Russ around for the next 15, 20 minutes and answer any of your questions vis-a-vis Facebook. Thanks again for watching this, and we hope you have a great day, and happy Easter.
Thanks, you too.
Happy Easter.